are back. We are back earlier than planned because everything was good tech-wise. So we're just gonna jump into it. We're gonna do it to it. And YouTube, it looks like we're live. Yeah, YouTube. Here we are, YouTube. Here we go. Yes, YouTube is back. YouTube is alive. YouTube is happy. Guys, what's up? Ron Placone here. And it's Friday. And we're doing a regular stream. That usually means I have a guest. Well, I do have a guest. We're continuing the Sounds of Revolution interview series with one of my favorite musicians. I've been following this guy for years. I've been lucky enough to do a couple live dates with him. He would let me open for him, and that was a really, really good time. He's like Joe Strummer meets Hunter Thompson, a one-man rock and roll experience. Mr. Hamell on trial. Hamell, how are you? I caught you mid-sip like a pro.
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you, buddy. You have done every inclination of a podcast that I've ever had. You have been a guest on, which is amazing. Really? I think you're the only person I can say that
How
about.
old was the first one? When I came off the Ani DeFranco bus and went to your mom's basement. How old were you then?
I was 20 years old. Or I might have just turned 21. I was either 20 or 21, but I was really young because I remember you put me on the guest list for the show, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to go because I was like, but they didn't ask any questions. We were on the guest list, so they just didn't ask any questions. And
was it Chicago?
It was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my hometown.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So we got to tell this story, man. So I was. I think I was either 20 or 21. I was very young. I was in college and I was home in between semesters and it was summertime. And I was just working a day job, saving up money for next semester at school. I went to school out of state at Indiana University. And I was a fan of your music. And I had a little podcast. And this was back in the day.
Were you a fan of Ani's as well?
I knew who Ani DeFranco was, but I wasn't super familiar with her, other than the obvious hits. Yeah. So, but I really, it was actually a coworker that got me into your stuff because they were like, dude, if you like singer-songwriter, but you also like a lot of punk rock, you got to listen to this guy Hamell on trial. And so I looked you up online and the first thing I heard was, I hate your kid. And I was like, this guy is awesome. This is so cool. And I've been a fan ever since. And I actually remember I was recently 21 because I actually remember this now. You played in Bloomington, Indiana, where I went to college. You played this club called Second Story. And I wanted to go, but I was like, it was literally a handful of days before my 21st birthday. So I couldn't go. They're pretty strict about that stuff in Indiana. I did not have a fake ID. So I couldn't go to your show. But the community radio station where I was a DJ at the time, I was one of the volunteer DJs at the community radio station, was literally right across the street from Second Story. So I actually had a shift as your show was going on. So you were actually across the street. Yeah, you were across the street playing. And I was like, so there's stuff going on. And you were on the events calendar too. So I actually had to read it to the listeners. And I'm like, so, at the Runcible Spoon, this is happening. And then over at Second Story, Hamell on Trial's playing. You might be there right now. I'm not, because I'm not 21. And then
there was only about 30 people, but they were really, they were sort of, the acoustic punk thing is it's a narrow graphic, if you will. And but they were very enthusiastic. It was a good gig. I remember it being a good gig. Went a lot of people, but they were appreciative.
That's a typical college town story. You don't always, it's not always, I've seen, and I just, when I was in college there, I remember I got to see, I saw the Queers and there were only 30 people in the audience. For the Queers, which was they're legends, really, but it was the most enthusiastic 30 people you could ever imagine because we just got to, and the band was a good sport about it. They were kind of like, why aren't there more people here? This is weird, but it was a college town over the summer, so you never know what you're going to get. but they made lemonade out of it, and they just took requests. People were just yelling songs,
you know,
and they played for hours.
My son's 18. He's going to college, and you know, he's a hip hop kid. All his friends are hip hop kids, and I don't know that rock. I mean, I don't know, a rock band in a college town now. I don't know. I don't see it around, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I try to go out as much as I can, but it gets harder as the years go by, and especially now since we're all quarantined at home. But
what? Right. So what? Here's a question. Like that whole, you know, like if LA in the 60s was the Doors and the Byrds, and in the 80s if it was hair metal and Motley Crue or whatever, and I mean, I guess maybe in the 80s there was also like a Black Flag and is there a scene now? What would the scene be in LA?
Ooh, I wish I knew the answer
What's
to that,
on the
man.
Strip? Hip hop?
Well, you see a little bit of everything on the Strip, actually, and yeah, like you really see every genre. And I will say this, man, the SoCal like punk scene is still alive and well in Los Angeles. I mean, everything from I mean, dude, I never thought I'd be able to utter this sentence in my life, but the sentence that I uttered in September of last year was, "Man, I'm bummed out I'm on the road because Black Flag is playing down the street from my apartment." I never thought I'd get to say that in my lifetime, but Black Flag.
Who's in Black Flag? Greg Ginn?
It's Greg Ginn. I mean, you know, like Henry's not part of it.
No, he won't do it.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly. I mean, it's kind of like an inclination to Black Flag, and then there's the band touring as Black Flag, and then there's also the thing that's just Flag, and those are a couple of different things. I honestly I'm not fluent in who's who necessarily, but I would go see any of them. You know, I'm just a neutral listener. You know, I don't. So I would go see any of them just to go see them. But yeah, Black Flag played literally right down the street from me. And I just, I was just I was on the road, so I didn't get to go. So that's still alive and well. And it's not just alive and well with, the earlier generations. I mean, X just put out a new album. But it's also alive and well for the newer generations too. There's still an amazing house show scene in Los Angeles. There's an amazing, oh yeah. And there's an amazing VFW scene. I mean, I've been to a couple VFW shows where it's like, they would have these punk bands, spanning the gamut. I mean, there'd be bands in their 20s, there'd be bands in their 50s. There'd be, and the audience reflected that. There would be, people of all ages at this show. And
I didn't know the LA was doing that's great. I do a lot of house concerts, and I like them because the people are there. They want to hear the music. You're not fighting over the din of the bar, and so and they can be really poignant. You do them as a comedian?
I do, actually. I started there's only a handful of comedians that do it, but I did it a little bit. Like I would just kind of promote it on Twitter, and just people who wanted to bring me in, we would like Skype together to make it, like just kind of meet and stuff like that, and see the setup that they were going for. And then I would come do the show. And I mean, so far,
I find them to be the intimacy, particularly around the holidays. For some reason, I do a lot of them like a week before Thanksgiving to New Year's.
Yeah.
And I've had some wild experiences that as an example, like a guy, we're loading out to my car. And he's like, thanks a lot. I haven't seen my wife laugh in 2 years. And I'm like, well, this is wild. A, thanks.
Yeah.
And B, like, what a thing to share with me. Like, I don't know this guy, really. He's just hired me. And all of a sudden they're sharing these kind of, sort of intimate domestic secrets. And it's like, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. And by the way, if anyone watching is not familiar with Hamell on Trial, he is very funny. So that's a compliment. Just in case anyone thought you were like you were some big like super serious folk guy. It's like, no, that's not Hamell. So when he said his wife laughed, that was a compliment.
Right. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss $10 goodbye.
So Yeah. So anyway, getting back to our thing. So I had a podcast when I was 20, and that was back in the day when it's like podcasts were still kind of an obscure thing to have. So if you had
Very
a
much so.
yeah, so if you had a podcast, and my podcast was not, I had no idea what I was doing. I was 20 years old. It was just me ranting about how terrible Bush was. And, I usually wasn't even sober. That was my podcast. But I actually got some pretty okay numbers.
But passionate, and passion's always going to sell to a demographic that identifies with it.
I hope so.
So I was psyched to do it. There was a weird. Let me preface this by saying the Ani camp were always very, very good. Always. I was on her label for 12 years. I toured with her for 12 years. Wonderful experience. She's as great a person as you'd ever want to. I wanted to preface before what I'm about to say, but there was a weird and cool thing when I'm getting off the bus because the 20-year-old kid wants me to go and be on his show. And I could tell there was a little bit in the internal camp, like, geez, they want Hamell and they don't want Ani. So there was this weird little, I don't know, sort of underground pride on my, the disenfranchised pride on my part. Like, like as obscure as I am, I'm obviously making a connection with the disenfranchised.
I'm glad I could make that happen for you, man. No, it was cool because and the thought that went through my mind was, well, because he's not the headliner, maybe he'll actually be willing to do my podcast. Because if you would have been headlining, like if it would have just been Hamell on Trial is on tour, I probably would have been too scared or timid to like ask you to do my podcast. Because I would have thought, dude, he does real press. He's the headliner. But because it was an Ani DeFranco show, I'm like, well, maybe he's not doing much press because he's the opening act and he'd be willing to do my podcast. That was my thought process. So that's why I reached out. And I think I actually emailed Righteous Babe Records and was like, I'd like to have Hamell on Trial on my podcast. And yeah, I remember you thought that was like just a cool thing. You were like, oh, these are like the modern day fanzines. This is going to be neat. And so I showed up. And this cop was like staring at me the whole time because I had like shoulder length hair. I had a bunch of piercings and I'm just standing there. And he goes, what are you doing here? And like, are you waiting for the band or something? Like, are you supposed to be here? And I'm like, yes, I have an interview with Hamell on Trial. He's the opening act for Ani DeFranco tonight. And he goes, you have an interview? Do you work for a paper? And I'm like, I have a podcast. And he's like, what the hell is that? And I'm just like, this might go south. I'm like, I swear I'm supposed. But then someone from the crew came out and they're like, you're the person that's here for Ed. And I was like, yes. And then we went and then we did the interview. And I remember you wanted to get a cup of coffee, and I'd never met you in person before. But like, I know your music, and I was familiar with, I think Songs for Parents Who Enjoy Drugs had just come out at that point. And so I just kind of knew you through the songs. And so I remember we go to a gas station, you pour a cup of coffee, and then you just start walking out of the gas station. And I was like, wow, man, this guy really lives this music. He's a badass. He's stealing that cup of coffee right now. That was like what I thought.
I didn't pay for the coffee?
No, you did. You did. So you start walking out and I'm just like, I'm just going to go along with it. I guess this guy, he's a rebel, man. He's just going to steal this coffee. And then as you're walking out, you're like, oh, geez, I didn't pay for my coffee. And then, and then you go back and you pay for the coffee and start. You're like, dude, I almost walked out with this. I'm sorry. I slept in today, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we went to my parents' basement and did a podcast together. And it was amazing. It was so much fun. It was such a cool experience for me.
Speaking of zines, so my son, who I said he's going to college and for film, that he's going to ask Syracuse University, he's going to be a film major. And so he just a minute ago, literally, said, hey, James Franco has a zine. I just bought his zine for $5.
Like a print zine?
And he goes, do you know what a zine is? I go, yeah, I know what a zine is. Used to go to Kinko's and makeup, right? And he goes, yeah, well, James Franco's got one now. And I just bought it. So he goes, look, you can see it. And it looks just like, it's got the fucking shitty, Kinko's mimeographed I just showed my age on that one. You know, poorly designed graphic thing and solarized photos and stuff. And they're making it not unlike cassettes. It appears they're making a comeback.
Yeah.
I would do it, but it's not cost effective. You know, again, it's a passion. It's motivated and driven by passion. I remember I asked my A&R guy who signed me to Mercury Records. I'm like, how do you become an A&R guy? What's there? And he had, when he was a kid, a Mott the Hoople zine. And then he started getting free records from record companies. Then he started promoting, like at his college, you know, like Public Enemy, when you could get Public Enemy for $1,200 because nobody knew who the fuck they were. And then all of a sudden he was in the music business and he became an A&R guy. He was making 6 figures a year. But I mean, he started as a zine. That's how he started. Because I was like, how do you become an A&R guy?
That's actually that's an encouraging story. It's like, hey, it all started with the zine. You know,
passion's always going to win. I mean, particularly if you can get in on it. You know, all those YouTube, like not Drake and Josh, but Smosh. Remember Smosh? Did you know anything about their, like, because my kid, again, when he was like 12 years ago, YouTube just, he had to watch it all the time. I'm like, what's the deal with this? And there was YouTube stars, right? Like, do you know Smosh? Or
I'm not familiar with that.
So, there were just 2 kids, and they took on, there were like a couple of kids in their mom's house. They were like 14, 15 years old. But then some like Atari or some shit. They did like a parody of Atari, and then Atari gave them shit. I don't know. I'm paraphrasing it poorly. The facts aren't correct. But anyway, some major company, and they took them on and then exploded. And I think they just broke up a few years ago. But there was Ray, somebody else. Anyway, the kids, but they were all, like, everybody that was doing it never, like skateboarding, they never expected to make any money. They just did it because they loved it. And then boom. And same with fanzines. You loved Mott the Hoople, New York Dolls. Nobody knew who the hell they were. You'd punk, the first punk zines over in England. Sniff and Glue or something? Anyway, no one would buy this if you 200 of them, sell them for 50 cents a piece. You were just great, but you loved it. But all these guys at the beginning, they got it. You know, they went on to do great things because they were just passionate about it. I mean, you better love you get a job you love, Ron, and you never work a day in your life.
That's what they tell you.
My dad told me that, and it's the truth.
Yeah, and you took him up on it. You were like, all right, I'm going to be a musician.
Quite frankly, much to his chagrin, that's the last thing he wanted me to be. Was when I was waiting tables, 15 years ago, and I used to say, my dad told me that, don't get in the music business. You're going to wake up waiting tables when you're 35, and not me, Dad. I'm different. Would you like more coffee? That was he's so endearing. Let's tip him.
We're down the street from me. This is going on the zine thing. He's not that much. I mean, he's in his early 20s, so it's like, there's a generation between us. And but he's really into music, my cousin, and he came to visit me in Los Angeles because I took him and his girlfriend to punk rock bowling in Vegas. We scheduled a trip together to go see punk rock bowling in Vegas. So he came out to visit me for a few days in LA. And I was just showing him around town, like I took them to Hollywood, did the whole gamut. And when we got back to my neighborhood, I live in Pasadena. We noticed at the convention center, there was this big free event going on, and it was a zine fest where zines,
really?
Yeah, dude. And it was zines from all over the country. And
were they giving them away or were you buying them?
There's a little bit of everything. I mean, there was some where they were like giving away or giving away one sheets and stuff like that, and other people were selling them to try to pay for their booths or whatever. But it was just this entire festival dedicated to zines, and wow. All 3 of us really wanted to go to this. We were like, "This is awesome!" So
a lot of hip hop.
There was I mean, it wasn't even just music. I mean, there were hip hop zines, there were punk zines, and then there were zines related to
gaming.
Yeah, gaming, clothes, YouTube, Pets. I mean, there was just, it was a film. I mean, there was a little bit of everything. So yeah, I mean, I feel like that whole subculture is still alive and well, which makes me very happy. You know, I mean, I'm sure production is not quite where it used to be pre-internet, but
I think the whole vinyl thing, people want tangible. I think, want to hold something,
So speaking of tangible, we'll go here now, man, because I want to talk here. Let me make sure yeah, there we go. I got to just do the opposite of whatever.
You are a guy with a segue, aren't you?
There we go. See, man, this is your latest, The Night at the Apocalypse, Profiles of a Rushing Midnight, Hamell on Trial. I picked this record up a while ago. I've enjoyed it very much. And so you recorded the entire thing on your iPhone. Is that correct?
On my Android phone.
Android phone. Okay.
On my $80 whatever the fuck this is. Hold on. I had to turn and my my Samsung Android $80 phone.
And it sounds great. I mean, dude, it's just a lo-fi acoustic punk album, great songs. And I never would have known that had you not said it. Like, had it not been publicized as like, yeah, I recorded this on an iPhone. It sounds great. And the spirit of the songs are there.
I should say this for those. I mean, obviously, the initial recording of it was free, but then I did bring it into Studio 4 in Philadelphia, which is Phil Nicolo, one of the Butcher Brothers, who knows me. We've worked together for 20 years, and he knows, what a screwball I am. And I was like, "Can you make this sound great?" He rolls his eyes, and then, "All right, I'll do it." And then he puts it through shit and makes it sound great, But it went every there was in the basement of some clubs. I was in an airport in Iceland, and I did one in the bathroom there, and on the road sometimes in the car off to the side in Boston or whatever. And for me, the ambience that you hear, I mean, for me, I can it brings back where I was, I mean, because I worked hard on this. I knew how I was going to do it, and I worked really hard on the songs, like knowing that, there wasn't going to be a solo, so I had to whatever. And like there's one where I drum on the steering wheel of the car, and I knew that I was going to do it that way, and so consequently I wrote the songs. They had to really stand up, without guitar solo.
Yeah. So
where am I going? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But we had a little bit of a lag there, but you're coming in coming in clear now. So you've toured all over the world, and I gotta ask, like, where, especially since right now we're all grounded, and it's been it's been difficult. I mean, not being able to perform has been hard. I miss it to death, and I'm sure you are going through that too. I'm sure, all my performer friends, comedians, musicians, actors, like, we're all feeling the hurt from that. So where has been like some of your favorite places to tour as of recent?
I really like Ireland.
Everybody says that.
I like it. There's not too many places. So and my son, who is filmed, he, as I say, since he was 6, he has had a camera, and he would sell merch at the shows, and then he'd get tips, and he'd come back from a summer tour with like $1,000, and he would buy good camera stuff. So he's always had a really good camera, and he's always filmed, and he's going to do this documentary of us on the road, which he was always telling me he was going to do it. When he was young, I was like, oh yeah, sure. But now it's brutally apparent he is, and it's wild. I watched some of the footage, and I had forgotten, and it was, and so he's probably done 200,000 miles in the car with me, and we would do the country in a couple different ways. So we would leave New York, and so it's probably started when he was 6 or 7, like only 8 or 9 dates, and it finally got to about 29 dates because a lot of the places were able to, he's 18 now, so over 12 years, if we do one this summer, I think it would be our 13th. And, so a lot of the places we go back to, I've sort of built accounts. I make a joke like I'm a brush salesman and you keep these accounts. I'm sure you do the same thing, you build relationships with people. You say, I'm coming through Chicago. You make one phone call and you make it easy. I do all my own domestic. I don't know about you, but I'm my own domestic.
Yeah,
so we would tour from New York, maybe down to Atlanta, and then cut through Tennessee to San Antonio, Texas. Now we could go one of two ways. We could continue to Vegas and California and up and do the whole country in a loop. So up to maybe Portland and then, start heading east, or we do a half a country. I think we've done the entire country 4 times, but we would do half a loop, and half a loop would be from New York down to Atlanta, over to Texas up to Minneapolis, and so back to what you were saying, asking me what's good and what, if domestically, I have a real problem from Texas has always been good to me. When I book a tour, I often start with Texas in the middle of the tour and do it, so I do Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Denton, which is north of Dallas, and I highly recommend it. Place called Dan Silverleaf, one of my favorite places to play in the world. Very sharp. There's a music college there. It's a great club, whatever. And then from Denton to Minneapolis, it's tough. And it's tougher now in Trump country because Iowa, in Missouri, it's tough. So that's the negative. And then Ireland, they don't have any of that Puritan. Your audience, at least my audience over there, my demographic is anywhere literally from 14 to 80. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly mixed. They don't have any of that, because I do blue, as you well know. So, not only is it funny, but it's definitely, I'm a potty mouth and my politics are very anarchistic. And so between the anarchistic politics and the potty mouth, they got no problem with it. They embrace it. They laugh. And so, boy, you don't have to, I don't really edit anyway. I'm sure you don't as well, but you sense sometimes, what that's like when there's a contingent of that audience that is freaking Puritans. I don't know how you do in New England, but New England has never embraced Hamell.
Really?
Like it should. Right? Now. And a lot of that has to do with New England has a real history of traditional singer-songwriters.
Okay.
I won't mention any names, and it's good, and it's not anything that I listen to, but it's incredibly well crafted, and and so I think they interpret me as just stylistically, not even content wise, but stylistically they interpret me as blasphemous because I embrace so many sort of punk rock things, spoken word. There's enough Gil Scott-Heron or Dead Kennedys as much as there is Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen.
Right.
And they want James Taylor or, John Prine, who I like, but so they really bristle. That has been my, however, that having been said, I toured with the Uncluded, which was Kimya Dawson and A$AP Rock. And I had one of the greatest gigs I ever, I think in Boston, they drew 1,600 people. And it was a phenomenal show. And that crowd really.
Boston. Uh-oh, did we lose you?
There was a little glitchy thing for a second. I think.
Yeah, we lost you for a second. No? But yeah, you're here now. We lost you for a second. But and I think we might. Yeah, I think you're here. Can you give me are you here? Can you hear me?
I hear you very well. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're coming in and out a little bit, but I think we got you. Yeah. No, I love playing Boston. I really love Boston, but as far as that area is concerned, like the history of comedy is, you know, probably a little bit different than, you know, music. But yeah, I enjoy Boston. And I've been in Burlington before, but it's been years. But if the world is back to normal, I'll be playing both Portland, Maine and Burlington, Vermont in September. And it'll be my first time in Maine. I've never even been to Maine. So I'm excited about that. I've never even seen it. No worries. There you are.
Dropped the phone.
There you go.
You were doing a thing with another guy, right? Weren't you doing a show?
Yeah,
like the liberal comics or the
yeah. Well, it's a progressive comedy tour, but these days we're just sort of, you know, just billing it with our names. But it's myself and another comic named Graham Elwood, and we just do a stand up tour together, and you know, we're still doing it, and now we do you know, we have some like kind of sketches and gimmicks that go along with the tour now, like we do a couple sing-alongs even, and so I bring my guitar on the road now. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, man. It's a really fun tour. I miss it. And, you know, I know that one of the things we've both done too is try to, have a reasonable substitute for it. And you've done some Facebook live shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Four.
Yeah. Well, how is that? Cause I know, the way we do it for comedy, or at least the way I do it, and different comedians have done different things. I mean, there's some comedians that like they'll just straight up go on Facebook Live and do their jokes. The way that we've been doing it is we'll do a Zoom show, and then we just kind of sell tickets in advance. It's just $5, and then you get the Zoom link right before the show, as if you're like the doors are opening, so to speak. And then we have like, we kind of ask the audience to police themselves. And what we say is we're like, okay, if all of you are unmuted, there's just going to be a lot of static really quick and no one's going to be able to hear the show. But if all of you are muted, then we can't hear any laughter. We can't hear any cheering. We can't, and it really just doesn't feel like a show at all if everybody's muted. So what we're going to ask you to do is that half of you, every 10 minutes or so, just mute yourself and unmute yourself. So just, keep yourself muted and then unmute yourself. And when you do that, it usually works out so that at any given time, half the people are muted, half the people aren't. And it works out. Like it's been working out so far. But, so I guess I'm curious.
In other words, to hear the laughter.
Yeah.
It's
like, well, so how is that for you? Because, even though you're doing music, you still have like a lot of like funny parts. You still have a lot of spoken word pieces. You still do a lot of jokes. Like there's definitely a large spoken component to what you do. You tell a lot of stories. So how do you how is it for you when you're not able to hear that direct feedback the way you can at like a Hamell show? Like, I mean, you can hear, I mean, I know your son monitors the chat and stuff. So, he can tell you when people are typing their approval,
right?
But you don't get to hear it live. If I didn't have
him, right? If I didn't have him, it would, it was shockingly comfortable. No one was more surprised than me. Because I got to be honest with you, I am live. I'm extremely comfortable, and on stage, probably more comfortable than just walking around. But for these, I was very the anticipation. There was a lot of anxiety, and having him was incredibly helpful. And he would read, like, if he wasn't here, it would have been awkward. I noticed there was a few, like, I watched Colbert, and I watched there was a few that I watched, The Daily Show, Trevor Noah, and initially at the beginning I thought, whoa, this is this ain't, but they've become, I think more, I didn't watch it for a couple of weeks, and now they've become more comfortable. It seems that they're funnier, and John Oliver is almost more funny without the people, and
really?
So he's really good. It's really good, and the other ones have become much better. They've become more comfortable with it. I know that if I didn't have Detroit there, but my son's name is Detroit. If I didn't have him there, it would have been weird. But it was great with him, and he would make me laugh, and I would laugh, and also right. And this caught me off guard because we've been palling around since he was born. So I mean, we're pals and very good friends, and I think a lot of people were, intrigued by our relationship, him and I, because we hang all the time, So I think they were a little taken aback by the way we respond to each other,
Yeah, man. I mean, it's super cool to see. He's, as someone who has just, crossed paths with you over the years, it's been amazing to just watch him grow up, and he's going to do amazing things. And for what it's worth, man, somebody asked me in an interview not too long ago, they were like, if you could go back and do one thing different coming up, what would you do? And the answer that I gave was, I wish I would have studied film production a little bit more in college, like at least taken 1 or 2 classes, because in this day and age, man, those skills are very invaluable. So, I mean, right.
I remember, right. Now that you mention this, I remember I went out, him and I went out to eat with you one time after a show in LA. And I remember, right. And how many years
it was
ago
in Nashville. Anyway, it was in Nashville. It was not in LA.
Right.
Yeah, it was when I still lived in Nashville.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so how many years ago was that?
That would have been about 5 years ago.
Okay, so he would have been 13.
Yeah.
And I remember, and it was really cool. Like he really liked you, but because I remember you treated him, you were asking him he had a YouTube channel, and one of his videos has got, I think, 60,000 hits now. It's nice. He did a hip hop video for the 13 colonies when he was in 8th grade. So it's kind, and so the reason it keeps getting hits is because the teachers in 8th grade use it for educational purposes. So anyway, so I think you were sort of curious, but you were asking him treating him respectfully as an adult, asking him questions about YouTube genuinely. You weren't, and I had forgotten about that, but now I remember that. Well, you sort of like you kids in your YouTube. What are you up to?
Well, I think I gave him a bunch of hair products too. I remember that because I got those hair products. I used to do this thing. A friend of mine was in this thing where basically
when I tell him that we're doing a podcast, that's right. I'm like, remember that guy? And then when I mention the hair products, then he's going to know who you are. That's right. That's funny.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's how I remember you.
Yeah, because I used to do this thing. There was like this convention that would come to town, and my buddy knew one of the groups involved, and they needed haircut people, like models. So, and it was a pretty cool deal because you got a bunch of swag, like a bunch of free hair products, and you got a haircut. And you got paid for it. So you got a paid haircut.
He used it. He loved it and used it.
Yeah. And I just wasn't, a lot of the stuff I wasn't using. So when he liked it, I'm like, dude, you can just have that. And he's like, really? And he's like, this is really good stuff. And I'm like, dude, I don't want it to go to waste. Take it all. And you were like, you were kind of being the parent in that moment. You were like, I don't know if you should give him one. I'm like, dude, Ed, I'm not going to use it. Let him have it. Just give him all of it. He can have it.
Right.
And I just gave him all of it. So where can people go to learn more about you?
I have a Wikipedia page. Let me think. There's a website, HamellOnTrial.org.
Yeah, you got a .org, which is awesome.
But Facebook, Facebook.
Okay.
It's
all right.
Either Edward Hamell or Hamell on Trial.
All right. So Hamell on Trial on Facebook.
No one does websites anymore. I don't think really.
Yeah. I mean, I still got mine. And we all still got them, but it's sort of like just, I feel like these days a traditional website is just sort of like, it's just sort of a verification where it's like, okay, you got one. I'll see your tour dates here if I can't see them on Facebook, and that's it. That's the purpose that it serves. I feel like it's been that way for maybe a little bit. Cause I remember even back when like MySpace first blew up, there were like certain bands where their website was literally just their logo and a list of tour dates because they were just like, that's all we need this for. Like, you can see our bio on.
I don't do it. I haven't been there forever. I don't really know, but I do Facebook all the time. You know, I utilize it for promotional purpose. I tweet sometimes, and I Instagram. My Instagram's most for the painting. I mean,
it's another thing. How long have you been painting for? Has that been a lifelong thing, or?
Well, when I first moved to Austin, Texas, I lived in Austin from 93 to 96, just 3 years. And do you know who Alejandro Escovedo is?
Yes.
Okay. So I moved there. I didn't know Alejandro, but we had some mutual friends. I went to see him. I got his album Gravity, and I loved it. And so I think he was, at the time, he was working at Waterloo Records. I think I went down there, you know, said that I respected him, loved the album, and I think he may have invited me to his house. Although I may have showed up on his doorstep. I don't know. I was sort of looking.
I may have just been circling his residence. I don't remember exactly what it was.
I was stalking him. Right. Right. It might have been peering in his window. I don't know. There was an underwear drawer. I don't remember. It's all
something about a restraining order. I don't remember. But it was anyway. We're buddies.
Right. Anyway, it's 6 feet away now. So I mean, it really doesn't. The distance. It's not that. So I went to his house, and I remember it because my wife and I had prints on the wall, not original art, and I was very taken aback. And I went in, and there was a lot of original art by probably Texas artists, and I was very taken aback by it. There was something about. So I said to my wife, you know, I'd like to, you know, we should go to some galleries and just see. So, but we had no money, you know, so went to some galleries, and it was brutally apparent that it was unaffordable. So I sort of went to an art supply place and bought some canvases, experimented. I'd always, you know, doodled a lot and did some stuff. And then I, for me, it was acrylics. They were easy. They were water washable. And I started doing it, and it filled my walls, and then never thought that I would pursue it any further. And then when I moved to New York, I was managed by Jane Friedman, and Jane had managed Patti Smith and John Cale and Nico and a lot of those people. And she dug my art, and she was always like, hey, we should do a show. And I still was reluctant because in those days, it's less so now, but in those days, there was only every time you put on an album, it would be highly scrutinized. There would, like Robert Christgau and Dave Marsh and Graham Marcus and all those guys. That was sort of the golden era of rock criticism. You'd put this shit out, and they would scrutinize it. And, you know, I was like, I paint for pleasure, and I don't want people, you know, giving me their frickin' opinions on this too, you know? And so I was reluctant. However, in 2008, when the bottom dropped out, I mean, there was a period of time when you could tour with Ani, and you could literally, and I'm not kidding, sell 200 CDs when you got done with your performance. Mm-hmm. And from 2007 to 2008, and again, this is not an exaggeration, you get done with your performance, and you'd be lucky if you'd sell 5 CDs. It literally went from, you know, $1,000 in merch sales to $80 in merch sales. And again, hearkening back to what we said earlier about people want something tangible, and this is why I think vinyl is making a resurgence. I started. Then I thought, well, you know what? Maybe what I'll do is I'll only paint people that inspire me. So where you're going to get a Noam Chomsky painting? Where you're going to get a Howard Zinn painting? Where you're going to get a Bukowski painting? I wouldn't do the obvious that you know, maybe the John Lennons or the Bob Dylans, or you could probably find that somewhere. But I'll give you an R. Crumb painting, or you know, RBG, who's my biggest seller actually. And they bought them, and you know, the markup was, I mean, they take probably an hour and a half to do, but I love surrounding myself with the people that inspire me. And, you know, and I only charge like $50 and, you know, I make a infinitely bigger, but it saved my ass. I mean, it's probably 50% of my income now. And, you know, and once again, similar to what I was saying to you about the success of my Facebook Live, you know, I've been touring for 20 years and I've been touring the world for 20 years. So consequently, a lot of seeds have been planted for people. You know, I think we had 700 people for the first Facebook Live show. And, you know, and that's because I've been doing it for so long. So now we've got collectors of these paintings, you know, people. John Prine obviously is a big one recently.
Yeah.
And, you know, but I won't do, you know, there's certain people that I'm not, like Dave Matthews, I won't do it. I'm not a big Pink Floyd fan. I won't do it. You know, you probably find it elsewhere, but I'm not going to do it. And it's worked for me, you know, that like these are people that again, passion, what we were talking about. I'm passionate about these people. People sense that and they buy it.
Well, I don't know if I appreciate you because I did I don't know if you remember, but you did I did ask you to make a Springsteen one as a gift for my parents, and you were willing to do it. So if you made an exception for me, I really appreciate it.
I like Bruce. That's
I love Springsteen.
Everybody, the Wildly Innocent, These Street Shuffle, big album in my life. Everybody's like, Hamell doesn't like. I do like Bruce. I like Bruce. I have the utmost respect for Bruce. Put that on my tombstone.
Yeah. Well, no, I just know it's something that people can. But I wanted you to do a Bruce thing for my folks, and it is in their living room.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, Ed, thanks so much for doing this. It's awesome to catch up with you guys. Go to HamellOnTrial.org. Pick up a record if that's your thing. Check out Hamell on Trial on Facebook. And are you going to be doing any more live shows? Is there anything that you got, like, well, live shows? You know what I mean? Like, are you going to be doing any more Facebook Live?
Yes, I am. Although I don't know when. So then after the last one, which was, I could tell you, was 14 days ago, because 2 days later, I thought, I had done 4 shows, each with a different theme. I had done 80 songs. I had repeated no song. Mm-hmm. So the first one was like a Hamell show. And then the second one was like rarities. And then the third one was Chooch Town. And then the fourth one was Parent. And then I thought, maybe I'll try to write, because I did this one time for a year when my marriage broke up. To keep myself sober, I wrote a song every day for a year, put it on YouTube. So maybe I'd write 15 songs in 15 days, and then I do a Facebook concert with the pandemic. Is that
pandemic. Yeah, pandemic.
The quarantine.
Yeah.
The virus.
Yeah.
The pandemic. Thank you. The pandemic songs. The plague. I know the plague songs. You
call it the plague song.
Testament to Camus. Yeah. So that's what then the next one. So I'm on day 12, I think, or 13 now, and I'm writing a song every day. I think they're kind of funny. We'll see. And I'll kind of polish them up after I get done. And then I would say maybe, what's today? Friday? Maybe
today's
2
April 24th.
or 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Perfect. So follow Hamell on Trial on Facebook. Yeah. Well, if they follow you on Facebook, they'll see it. So follow Hamell on Trial on Facebook,
they will.
y'all. All right.
Hamell.
Thanks so much for doing this. It was great catching up with you.
Thanks for having me, Ron. But good luck to you, and congrats on the marriage.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers.